You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show. The preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the big show. And the Iron Lady sings and that makes it official. Welcome. As always, we have the most smartest people, the brilliant minds of the Chris Voss Show. The CEOs, the billionaires, the White House presidential advisors, the Pulitzer Prize winners, the astronauts, all the people who bring their brilliant minds and stories to life and help enlighten you, entertain you, and all that great stuff. We have an amazing author on the show with us today. We're going to be talking about her newest book that comes out April 16th, 2024. It's called The Band. It's a novel by Christine Ma-Kellams. She joins us on the show, and we'll be talking about all of the wonderful stuff that went into it. She is a Harvard-trained cultural psychologist, Pushcart-nominated fiction writer, and first-generation American. Her work and writing have appeared in HuffPost, Chicago Tribune, Catapult Salon, the Wall Street Journal, The Rumpus, and much more. The Band is her first novel, and you can find her in person at one of the California's coastal cities or online. Welcome to the show, Christine. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm super excited to be here.
Super excited to have you as well. Congratulations on the new book. Give us your .com. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs?
So my website is just my name. So Christine Ma-Kellams. So Ma-Kellams.com. So I have like all my socials linked there and like the stuff about the book, the bio, everything.
There you go. So give us a 30,000 overview of your new book and what's inside.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, my book is essentially about this K-pop boy bander who finds himself canceled after he releases this like viral song that dredges up old ethnic rivalries between East Asia's three superpowers like China, Korea, and Japan. So he ends up escaping to America to hide in the McMansion of a American therapist he meets at like the grocery store. And essentially it follows what all the sort of disruptions that happen afterwards as his band ends up like confronting the fandom in these like increasingly violent interactions that end up changing the music industry. Wow.
This sounds like quite the adventure that it goes on and everything else. What rooted you in some of the plot to this? Where did you come up with it, or what was the influence for it?
Yeah, so I originally started writing this book a couple of years ago, right around the same time that I discovered discovered is in quotes, right? Because obviously K-pop has been around forever. But I personally did not really know that much about K-pop until about like 3 years ago, right? Around 2020. So when I discovered K-pop, thanks to like BTS and like Saturday Night Live and the James Corden show, it really just opened up this whole new world. Like I'd always been a music fan, like growing up, like every other teeny boppy girl. Like I followed all the like boy bands of the 90s and early aughts, but I didn't know what K-pop was like. And when I found out, I realized they're like an entirely different animal than even the like American fandoms and like American music acts. And so a lot of the like things that actually has happened in K-pop, not necessarily like direct events, but a lot of sort of the shenanigans that have like gone on in the world of K-pop inspired different bits and pieces of the novel.
There you go. And I guess you're a member of the BTS army as well.
Yeah, I mean, at this rate, who isn't? But yeah, definitely. I love BTS. They're probably like gateway drug into the world of K-pop, and they're probably who I follow the most.
Wow, there you go. I'm a Metallica classic rock fan, so I haven't breached over that bridge to K-pop. So I'll take a gander on your recommendation.
Yeah, do it.
There you go. Maybe we can get Metallica to pair up with the BTS folks or one of the K-pop groups, and
amazing. They do a lot of like collaborations.
Yeah, they do.
Heavy metal so far, but I feel like they could.
You could. There's always collaboration, and crossover. I think is what they call it when they go from one genre to another. Beyonce just put out an album that covered like most of the charts. I don't think she made the K-pop charts, so that's a disappointment. But there's that. So it sounds like quite the adventure and a multi-international adventure. So tell Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you grow up? When did you kind of first discover your panache for writing?
So I grew up in China. I moved to America when I was like fairly
Mhm,
young, when I was 5.
mhm.
And it took me a long time to learn English. I don't know if it's just a slow kid or whatever, but like I don't think I really spoke in like was fluent in English until maybe towards the very end of elementary school, like early middle school. But pretty much ever since I could put two sentences together in the English language, I've liked writing and I've wanted to write. And it wasn't until fairly recently that I started writing fiction. Like,
Mhm.
my training is in like social sciences and psychology, and so most of my writing was just in empirical journals and like academic stuff like that. It was way more boring. But when I started reading again as an adult, like for
Mhm.
fun, that's when I started like remembering that I really like fiction probably more than I like anything else. And so it really just one thing turned to another, and now I have a novel.
There you go. Congratulations. Yeah, I pulled up your book list and I was like, wait, she's got a novel?
Yeah.
And I mean, you're a Harvard trained cultural psychologist. And
Hmm.
I think most of your writing that you've done for a lot of these places was in the field of psychology, wasn't it?
Hmm. Hmm.
And now you're writing novels. Well, we have so many great novelists that have been on the show like yourself, and I've often wondered, should I give up nonfiction and writing about business, which is kind of boring?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you totally should because I honestly, I mean, I'm a big fan of nonfiction books too. Like I
Oh,
read nonfiction. And
mhm.
I feel like you can learn a lot from nonfiction. But I also feel like the skill set you have for writing nonfiction probably translates. So
Yeah, it probably does.
yeah, and like the expertise you have in like business and in your own background, like in negotiation and all that, like I feel like would make for a really compelling thriller, and like you have inside knowledge that maybe a lot of writers don't necessarily have. I feel like you could
Yeah.
write a very compelling story.
You want to know something funny? I just got a plot for a novel right in my head.
No way.
The other way.
Oh, it's fast.
Oh, and it's really good. Yeah. So
Oh my
thank you. I may have to credit you in the book for this. I'll make some notes after the show. But yeah, it just pounded right into my head like a novel plot. I would tell it on air, but I'll tell you after
God.
what it
Okay,
is.
yeah, I
I'll
can't
let you
wait.
after we go off air. I'll run it by you. But yeah, I think it might be a good one in the genre I could write about.
Oh,
You helped cue it with your the business you're in and et cetera, et cetera. So with the band, what made you fill out the characters in here, the protagonist? Was it just characters from your creation, or do you have any influence of maybe some of the people you've seen in the business?
yeah. So, if you make it through the book, and the book's not long, but if you make it to the
Mhm.
very end, you get to the acknowledgements, you might notice that like BTS is one of the people I acknowledge very early on,
Uh-oh.
like before like my family and everything, because you're absolutely right. Like, not necessarily, I don't mean it to be like a direct reflection of any particular like real world person.
Mhm.
And it's not like a one-on-one like direct reflection, but I think some of the just general like personas that I've sort of observed either among like the BTS members themselves or just among like musicians more broadly, like I'm a big fan of just following celebrity culture. I ever always have been ever since I was a kid, and I don't think what we see as fans from the outside is necessarily a great reflection of who people are when no one's looking. But
Mhm.
I do think it's interesting, especially now in the world of like social media, where I feel like there's a lot more direct like visibility into how people like the stuff they post. Like you don't always have to watch them through the guise of like a journalist asking them a very
Mhm.
specific question, right? Sometimes you see them posting their own content, and I feel like you get a lot better sense of what people, how they think and what's going on in their minds. So definitely a lot of like actual musicians and celebrities inspired like different parts and bits of the novel and the characters in them.
There you go. And one of the characters is a Chinese American woman he meets in Los Angeles, H
Hmm.
Mart. And so, is there a bit of you maybe in the book, or maybe just your experience as a Chinese American woman?
I mean, there's bits of me in the sense that like the references she makes about psychology and the stuff she
Ah,
talks about that's purely psychological,
oh wow.
like those kinds of like I make references to like psych studies and to stuff
Ah,
we know about mental health and depression and stuff like
mhm,
that. So like those things, I obviously have direct access to myself. Like I teach on those things, I tell my students about them, and so like those things are probably the most direct reflections of me.
mhm,
And obviously, I do live in LA. I love this particular area of the world.
Yeah.
LA gets a bad rap, but like this particular South
It's
area.
wonderful. I love LA too. I grew up in
Oh, you
California.
do?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm glad. I've
hell with
always
anybody who doesn't like LA.
really, I mean, I feel like maybe just the people I know. I know a lot of people from like the Bay Area, for example, who like hate
Well,
LA.
screw it. The Bay Area. Give me a break. Screw those people. Those aren't real
Or like
people.
New Yorkers who like despise.
Yeah, they're just jealous they don't have sun. I don't know what,
So who knows?
363 days of the year and warm weather and beautiful beaches. I mean, what kind of beaches are there in New York? Screw those people.
That's true. You probably have to, I don't know, go to the Hamptons or something,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
But yeah, so like the parts of like my hometown or like the area where I live now that
Yeah.
make cameos in the novel, those are obviously firsthand experiences.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, and those things definitely, I think a lot of fiction, whether people admit it or not, is autofiction, right? Like you unless you are just the world's best researcher, which
Mhm.
a lot of artists are really good at research. I feel like a lot of people are drawing not necessarily in exact events, but in terms
Mhm.
of like locations or feelings or character profiles they're
Mhm.
drawing from their own life.
Well, the old saying is what? You write what you know,
Mhm.
basically. Yeah. I don't know
Yeah.
who said that. Maybe I just made it up. Maybe no, but I'm pretty sure someone said that. You write what you know.
Mhm.
A lot of novels we have on this show, they'll secretly admit to me in the green room. They'll be like, "Yeah, I set this in France so that we could have a budget to go to France and
No
do
way.
do research." So I'm helping you with your next book, or we had to go to Germany and see all the expensive places because research.
Funny.
I'm like, I see what's going on with them budgets there at those Simon Schuster and stuff. So there you go. Now you mentioned the book is portrayed as a portrayal of a mental health, public accession, fandom, and
Mhm,
cancel culture. And I
mhm,
imagine a lot of that's interwoven with your experience as a psychologist and stuff.
mhm.
Do you ever do any self-reflection to go, maybe I'm a little too into K-pop?
I mean, a little bit. Like one of the things that that I think psychologists are becoming
Hmm.
more aware of now that I don't think because here's the I don't mean to poo-poo on like psychology, but I want to admit that I feel like the social science is always a couple of years behind of what's actually happening.
Oh.
Like by the time like academics know about it, like it's been around
Hmm.
for a long time, right?
Hmm.
Like for a long time, psychologists were still primarily studying like Facebook and Twitter and not realizing that like the social media landscape has like changed so fast so that if you're still studying Facebook and Twitter, I'm not saying that's not useful, but I'm saying that's just like a very tiny portion of what's
Yeah.
really all the action happening. So absolutely, I think one of the things that I do hear a lot of conversation about, not so much in psychology, but just in public discussion, is like how people's parasocial relationships, like relationships with people they don't actually know, can become
Mhm,
like delusional. Like the
mhm,
Lulu is like a very popular phrase if you're thrown around in like social media, and I
mhm,
do think that's super interesting. And I would love to see more studies on it because I think you're absolutely
mhm.
right. It is something. I mean, fundamentally, it is delusional, right? To
Yeah.
assume anything about a famous person you've never met. But I do think it's so pervasive now that we should probably pay more attention to it, and we have to like ask, like, why? Like, what is the maybe the undercurrent behind this? Are there consequences to being like this,
Sometimes. I
right?
mean, for years at events, we've had people run up to me at shows and be like, "The Chris Voss Show," and you're like, "Security, security." I mean,
No way.
they come up to you and they
Uh-huh.
think that they know you because they've
Yeah.
seen you on air, and so I've experienced a little bit of that. But since you're a psychologist, someone in our Facebook groups has posted this. Do you have any idea whether this person is mentally stable or not? Rick Kraft. What the hell? I, I can't make sense of this comment, so I'm just gonna leave it. Anyway, I had to give him a tease. So yeah, I mean, there's political. There's a lot of fandom. People
Mhm,
worship these individuals. Sometimes
mhm,
it gets dangerous or has been
mhm,
dangerous to some stars or movie or things. So
mhm,
there's something that I think a little bit of healthy fandom is good. I tend to
mhm.
buy a lot of Metallica crap, and I'm a huge collector of my favorite band,
No
Rush.
way.
So
Have you met
um,
them in person ever?
what?
Have you met them? Like, have you?
No, I've always wanted to, but the stars never aligned, I guess. But it would be fun. But I guess I'm a kind of a lazy fan, so I haven't quite reached the psychotic level of fandom where I'm following them. I saw a video one day where they said they met some fans that say they go to every concert and follow them all around to all the concerts. I don't know who's got that kind of money or time, but there you go. I probably would if I had the money.
Amazing.
I probably would. I don't know. I'm a fan, but I kind of get it. But man, you see those BTS screaming fans, and they remind me of I grew up with the Beatles, and so you would see the girls screaming the Beatles audience, and they would just overwhelm whatever audience they were in. And of course, girls chasing down the street in the funny videos, and just this you're just like, holy crap.
Yeah, I see a lot of, or I've heard a lot of comparisons to Beatlemania. And that's what I originally assumed as well. Like before I really got into K-pop, I just thought like, oh, it must just be a really popular fandom in the way that like Beatles in the 60s and 70s, or like, Backstreet Boys and NSYNC in the 90s and early aughts. But I think one thing you mentioned, like political fandoms too. I think one of the things that is distinctive about K-pop fandoms and like armies and I don't nowadays I've noticed it's not just K-pop. I think it might be expanding to like even like Swifties and other kinds of like. I do think like they're surprisingly organized and strategic, and they do band together to promote like causes, right? Like, like it's not just we love these particular people and we admire their music. It's that if we know that these particular people are also supporting causes, like the fandoms will get together and like donate masses of money towards like their band's favorite causes. They'll come together, during the last presidential election, they like messed with Trump's like campaign, right, by buying up and not showing up. So I feel like one of the things that may be unique about more modern day fandoms is that they're not just banding together over love of these particular people. They're banding together over like geopolitical or ideological causes. And that's super interesting to me. Like I could see it going so many different ways.
Did you watch that during the Swifties and the NFL and the weird conspiracy things that got crazy? I mean, I
was really intrigued by all the like surrounding the Super Bowl and leading up to it. I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize that there could be this much extra on top of like
it's a football game, and it's a I mean, she's a very talented singer. But man, I tell you, there's a lot of people afraid of them Swifties. It's like you'll see announcers and stuff talk very nicely about them, and like you don't go against the Swifties because they will come at you as an army. And and they love their band. I mean she is a great talented artist. I remember watching her when she first started out and just seeing her play solo with an acoustic guitar without all this crap that people have nowadays with auto tune and stuff. And I'm like, damn, she's got talent. And I think in her early YouTube videos, so she's definitely a power force. But yeah, seeing the the whole thing, well, she could throw in a whole election in the US, and you look at she can fill a stadium big. I mean, she could run for president. She can fill a stadium better than any presidential candidate.
Yeah, exactly.
So she just take over, and we'd probably all have to wear her glam outfits. That might be one of the executive orders. We don't have to wear tassels and pink, and I don't know. I'd probably go along with it for fun because I don't know. I think she's a good artist, but there you go. So but yeah, it's interesting to study. Maybe your next book could be studying the fandom of everything else. Do you have anything else you're working on? Anything next in the queue yet? Or are you gonna roll with this and see how it goes?
I mean, I always have other stuff that I'm working on. Like before I even wrote this novel, I had like a whole nother novel that I had written. And so I'm like showing stuff to my editor and to my agent and seeing like what they think and what they like. So yeah, I write a lot of like short stories too. And those are mostly for like lit magazines, but I do want to put them together in like a collection. I'm told that people don't like short stories as much as novels do. Like this apparently is a thing in the publishing industry where like commercially, like people just don't eat up short story collections as much as novels, which boggles my mind because like social media, I feel like has shortened all our attention spans. So I'm like, I feel like if anything, we should read.
Yeah, you would think. I don't know. Women really love novels. We have a lot of people on that write beach reads, and I guess beach reads are huge, but they're still kind of thick enough that you can, give you something to do over a vacation when you're ignoring your husband and the kids, and when they're drowning in the water. That's not what happens, Chris. Don't be dark. It's always comedy, but I mean, women love beach read novels. They love novels. It seems to be the consumption that we see on the show, and they just eat them up. People love, that's why people watch TV, movies,
exactly.
entertainment, is to be entertained. her stories. Chris Voss show. We always say stories are the owner's manual of life, and just people love them. They need to be entertained because real life is really boring.
A little bit. And I've always wondered about that, the whole like the people who read. I've been told this too. It probably depends on genre. So I'm sure like genres like, I don't know, sci-fi or mystery, there's probably more male readers. But I have heard over and over again that for a lot of like mainstream genres, just like commercial fiction, it's mostly women readers. And men don't read as much, or like men will read nonfiction way more than they read fiction. And that has always sort of boggled my mind. I've never quite figured out why.
Well, if you understand the penchant for women's romance and the guy who always got away, or the guy they really wanted, what's the old Chris Rock saying? The reason your wife's always angry, or your girlfriend's always angry at you, is because the one she really wanted got away. And so if you understand what a lot of novels are, they're built on that premise of the guy who got away, or the misconnection, or the fantasy of what what she was, an imprint of an alpha male or an alpha widow from when she was young. And so a lot of them go back, it's the same plots of the Lifetime movies, right?
Okay.
She goes back to the old small town she moved in out of after she went to New York, and meets the high school guy who didn't give her the time of day back then, but she had a crush on, so that sort of thing.
Maybe it's just like specific storylines, or kind of like romance, or
they're kind of, it's always she meets the old guy that, I don't know, should have worked out or didn't work out, or she had a crush on, or and sometimes they get along. If you look at Lifetime, it's like every show is the same plot, really, when it comes down.
Sure.
It's just in a different scenario.
Interesting. Okay.
And that's why women like it more than men, because we just don't do that romance thing. But women love it. Women love it. They love reading all about it. And of course, part of the novels too, it takes, and that's the reason I used to come home to my girlfriends, not my girlfriends at the same time. My girlfriend and her mom, and they'd have an ottoman pulled up to the front of the TV, the big TV, and I come in and they both be there crying.
No way.
Lifetime.
Over the book?
Yeah. Over they be watching a Lifetime, probably.
Okay.
And I just be like, I just see the both of them crying, and they turn to me, and I'd be like, "What's going on?" He broke her heart, and I would just turn and leave. I just leave.
Wow.
And so part of it is women love that emotional. It's emotional gymnastics, the Olympics that they go through when they watch. When they read a great novel, or they or they do the thing. So that's I think that's why they love it. It's basically exercising their emotions. That's why men don't get into it, but it makes it nonetheless, very popular and very attractive to women. And so, and plus we get great novelists on the show like yourself. And so it makes for great content for us. So we're self-serving in that way. Any final thoughts you want to share out to the people to get them to pick up your book and check it all out?
Not really, other than to say that like I didn't actually write this book primarily for like K-pop fans. I sort of just wrote it because I think whether you engage in this music or not, like the fact of the matter is it is changing our cultural landscape in one way or another. But I think that's the most interesting thing about it. Like you don't have to know anything about BTS or any other K-pop band for the matter to realize that like the landscape of music is changing, and like the globalization of what we listen to, what we consume, and also the nature of the music industry is changing. And like one of the side plots in my book is about like how AI and will ultimately sort of shift the way we consume music. And I think like we're only starting to see that a little bit more now with like more discussion about how like, AI generated content is going to be, taking over some of the stuff that people are putting out there. So I think that's sort of like, for me personally, like I'm not a romance writer. I don't really write or read that much like chick lit. So for me, I think it's the
what did you call it? Chick what?
Chick lit, like
chick lit?
Women's fiction.
Chick literature?
Yeah.
Okay, you got to say that slower or faster. I'm not sure.
Oh, that's true. It might just sound like I'm saying the gum. So yeah, I feel like bigger issues about like where society is heading and the dystopian nature of sort of society, I think is sort of interesting reasons why, I wrote this book and and hopefully it comes through.
There you go. There you go. Well, it was wonderful to have you on the show. Thank you very much for coming on. It's been fun and insightful. And then we covered some psychology lessons on novels and BTS fandom. So there you go. You got a psychology lesson, folks, and you got a great novel to order up. So thank you very much for coming on, Christine.
Thank you.
There you go. Thanks, Monis, for tuning in. Order up the book wherever fine books are sold. You can pre-order it today so you can be the first one on your block to say you read it. The Band, a novel, comes out April 16th, 2024. Thanks, Monis, for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, youtube.com/Chris Voss, and all the places we are on the internet. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys